Good afternoon, and welcome to Brunch and Budget on Bonfire Radio with your host, Pamela Capallet, a certified financial planner here to help take the bite out of your budget, brunchandbudget.com. I'm your sound provider, Dialect, and here's your host, Pamela Capallet.
Thank you, Dialect, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in this week. We are super excited to actually have, last time we had Summer Red, who we interviewed at the AFCPE conference, and we have two more shows for you from the AFCPE conference. We were able to interview almost all of the keynote speakers, and they had some amazing things to say. In this first episode of all the keynote speakers, we have Kristen Berman, who talks to us about behavioral economics and behavioral finance and gives us an idea of how social cues and our own fears and feelings around money really dictate how we spend our money. And hopefully that'll give you insight into any habit changes that you need to make and want to make. Then we have Lillian Singh, the director of Prosperity Now's Racial Wealth Divide Initiative, talking about the importance of supporting leaders of high-impact nonprofits of color and the programming that she does with them through the Racial Wealth Divide Initiative. And finally, we have Sandra Davis, the founder of Sage Financial Solutions and the person who runs the Financial Fitness Coach program to get your certification through AFCPE. And she gave us some really great insight into the difference between a financial planner, a financial counselor, a financial coach, and what financial coaching really means and looks like and if it's right for you. So we hope you enjoy it as much as we enjoyed meeting these people. And yeah, take a listen. We are excited to talk to Kristen Berman, the co-founder and principal of Common Sense Labs. And Kristen is doing a session on bridging the gap from education to behavior change. And I'm actually super excited to talk to you because I've been interested in behavioral economics for a while, and I've seen it evolve from investments and how people deal with the market and things like that to really just like general finance and understanding like why they do the things they do. So can you talk to us about what behavioral finance and behavioral economics is?
No, just kidding.
I know nothing about that.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to be here as well. Thanks. Generally, as we think about human behavior, we say what influences our behavior. Mm-hmm. And kind of from a typical economics model, you look at things like information, you look at things like utility costs and money. So if I want to go buy a coffee, I will go evaluate all the things that would tell me if this coffee is good. And
right, I do that all the time.
Yeah, and the future value of my money to spend this coffee. And obviously the reality is that we don't do that.
Right.
Instead, like a pre-Yelp.
Huh?
Pre-Yelp.
Pre-Yelp.
Minority Report Yelp.
Pre-Yelp yourself in your mind.
What's the future value of this $3?
Yeah.
Well, that's what everyone tries to tell us with compound interest, right?
Right.
You know, if you took that $5 and put it in an investment account, and you're like, no, right?
Yeah. And so the reality is we just don't do this. Instead, we kind of look around our environment for cues around how we should act, whether it be like the coffee shop I went to yesterday, or there's a line, and so that implies that that's a good coffee.
Right.
So
it's not even about the dollars. It's about social cues and environmental cues.
It's about a lot of things in our environment. And so that's probably the essence of behavioral science. Is it's not around knowing information. It's around kind of looking at our environment, and then we're influenced by those kind of cues.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. And so where does the economic piece come into it?
Well, I wouldn't even. I think it's funny that it's called economics because there's a lot more around psychology.
Oh, okay.
It's a lot more around like how we view the world versus necessarily an economic model of decision making. Kind of to go even further into that, when we think about economics, we think about graphing curves, and so kind of two pillars of behavioral science that can be graphed are kind of like the two big words you may know: loss aversion.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So basically, we are more upset by losing money. So if I were to take your money versus give you money, you'd be very upset. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of something. If I were to give you a bonus, you'll be very happy. But if I were to decrease your pay,
you'd be exponentially more unhappy.
So upset,
yeah.
Right?
And that extrapolates to things like when you go and make a purchase and then you find out it's on sale a week later, you're beating yourself up for being stupid.
For losing money.
Yeah,
right.
You lost money in that instance.
Yeah, and it goes the opposite way too, right? Because then we're more attracted to discounts in some ways. And so that that then causes us to maybe act a little bit irrationally because we don't want to lose money if we're to buy it later.
Right, you buy stuff that you don't actually need in the moment because you may need it in the future, and now it's cheaper than ever, so you gotta do it now.
Well, and it feels rational to think that, right? Like, I might need it later. Future value of money, right?
Well, you feel smarter, too, about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the sad thing about money is that we see everybody spending it. We don't see people saving it. So I was in New York and I walked by a large line for a sample sale.
Yeah.
You see people spending money.
Yeah.
And yet we don't have a cue in the environment for saving money.
Right. That's a really great observation. I never thought about it that way. It's how do you encourage something that no one sees and there's no visibility for it?
Correct. So
There's none of those social cues.
None of the social cues. This is one of the problems with savings. It's very abstract, far in the future, not concrete. Everything else in our world around spending is very concrete. The shoes, the clothes, the house, the car.
Vacation.
I'm racking my brain to think of a time when you're seeing someone save money, and the best I can think of is when someone is spending money, but it's at a discount, and you're like, they're smart for doing
they're
that.
still saving money.
Still spending money.
Still spending.
Well, Mama Lect always said, a sale's not a sale if you still can't afford it.
Yeah.
Well, that's very nice.
That's so interesting, too, because the language where you say you're saving money, even though you're actually putting down physical dollars and saying, like, oh, I'm spending this money, but I'm saving 50%.
Right. Now, there's
you're still spending.
Trick.
And these are, and I think one of actually the things, a big piece, not necessarily research, very hard to research this, is that we tend to want to increase our lifestyle too quickly. So we tend to want to buy the house, buy the car.
Fake it till you make it kind of thing.
Yeah, and basically once you do that, you can't go back.
It's so true. That
real.
lifestyle creep, yeah.
So it's keeping up with the Joneses, but again, are you going to move from a big house to a small house? Likely not.
Oh, because it feels like going backwards. That whole taking away something, making you upset.
It's super loss. It's identity loss
aversion.
aversion.
Essence of loss aversion.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think at the macro level, this idea of saving money seeing people spend money is something that you can kind of internalize and say you're not going to increase your own lifestyle to keep up with that. You kind of keep yourself steady. So it's not even that you're spending more, you're just not changing how much you spend year over year.
Yeah, which I feel like is a big victory in itself to be able to even as you're making more money, keep your lifestyle the same.
Correct.
Because it is really easy when you see more money in your bank account, your habit is to spend it.
Right.
So the more you have, the more you spend.
Yep. So I think we could also touch on another piece of this, which is we're talking about finances right now. There's somewhat of a I don't know how to explain this. The idea that basically just learning about finances will help you change your behavior out in the real world when you're about to spend the discount.
So I can't just read a finance book and change my entire financial life. Damn it!
Well, that's more the good old theoretical stuff where we get the information and we're like, oh, I'm done.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So this is where you could tell yourself, I know discounts are bad or make me spend more, but will that change the next time that you go out into the world?
Will that change your behavior?
Right. Mm-hmm. And so kind of the behavioral science says likely not. What would change your behavior is if you, just didn't go. So you yourself kind of crafted your own environment. And by the way, dieting has done really well at this. They say if you want to lose weight, don't buy the cookies.
Right.
It's very simple.
Yeah.
And so it's not that you should eat less of the cookies, just don't buy them. And that's because you're changing your environment to help you achieve your goals.
Got it. So that's one of the main things in terms of behavior change is just physically not putting yourself in that situation.
Correct.
Knowing the social cues and the environmental
it's
cues.
like the sale thing. Like the cookie thing is just like the sale thing. Oh, I'm going to eat less cookies. You're still cookieing up.
And some of it's not putting yourself in the situation. Some of it's crafting your own environment to improve the likelihood of success. So imagine that you created a savings account in your bank account that said, if you have kids college savings, or if you want to save for a vacation.
Label it.
Because you're basically you're creating the envelope system, which most folks know, but you're doing it as an environmental. You're not saying I should do the envelopes.
Right, for
you're
a nebulous reason.
Changing how your bank account looks. So you're making a hack to your life that says I'm going to create the envelope system, and then I'll make the automatic withdrawals in it, not just tell myself I should do it.
So that has proven to help people actually save for those things and be able to save more.
So labeling and mental accounting is very nice because it basically, we kind of compare it to a Pringle can where you, and I don't know, back in the day, they're 2 Pringle cans.
Yeah.
And when you get to the bottom, you likely stop.
Right.
You're not going to go and immediately get to the second one. Versus if there were just one whole
Like tall.
row of, you'd probably just keep going.
Yeah.
And so mental accounting has shown more to help with the stopping problem, where you basically have little labels, and then you know how much you can spend in each one.
Got you.
Now, it hasn't worked in some ways when you create multiple goals. If I were to have 15 goals, am I likely to no, you just get frustrated.
Right. So
And
too many is a bad thing.
Exactly.
Still.
Well, I mean, that's the thing that we found when it comes to like tracking your expenses and stuff like that. If you're trying to do 30 of them at once, you're just not going to do it. And
Right.
if you can't focus, it's not going
Yeah.
to work.
So we call this a rule of thumb. So this idea that basically in the world is complex. If I were to go and just try to do budgeting, I'd have to remember I'm going to spend $100 on going out to eat this month, and I have to remember what I spent, what I'm going to spend, and make that calculation in real time.
Yeah.
In theory, what you want to say is like, I only go out to eat on Friday nights, and if it's Thursday, I know what to do. I don't go out to eat.
Oh, so instead of saying like I'm limiting myself to these dollar amounts, change the actual habit or behavior around like your own like timing and the way that your week is structured.
A little bit, yeah. It's just having a heuristic, basically a decision rule that you would say. So it could be something like when I go out to eat, I only buy appetizers. I'm not limiting it to just like what you do when. You can have basically a very tangible thing that says when I'm forced with temptation, I will do this. And again, it kind of goes back to this no carb dieting thing where you would say like, dieting is a lot of things figured out, even though 70% of the population is overweight.
Right.
We'll talk about that in another podcast. But you would say no carbs, and you know what to do when you see bread.
Yeah.
And that's what we should think about our finances.
I
is
see.
You
So
know, what
to do.
Finances are delicious bread.
Yes.
I get it.
No, don't say that. I love bread and I
You
can't
just
eat
lick
it.
That's all. Just
Yeah,
kidding.
exactly.
Just look at it and sniff
Yeah.
the money, and then, or
Save
maybe
the
don't.
money, put it away.
Yeah.
But how I love that. How does someone decide sort of what those rules or those triggers should be for themselves?
Good question. So we've done some work on like what people regret. So we did a study where people looked at all of their spending, the last 40 transactions that they're spending, and then rated them on saying like, how much do you regret this? So our hypothesis is you should not reduce spend on what makes you happy. This just seems terrible, right?
Like, don't give up that coffee every day if it's the joy of your day.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So money is and should be about happiness. It's about optimizing happiness with what we have. So then the question is, what do you regret? And let's just decrease that. So what we found is that people are regretting things that they control. So things like going out to eat, things like going to the bar, bank fees. Things you have some perception of control on. We don't find a lot of regret on things like utilities or, in fact, some of the things
Rent,
rent, yes, exactly. So we basically want to look at the things that are kind of this discretionary income and that we can change, and then evaluate those and then make rules around that.
Yeah, got you. So really it's like your needs are your needs. You're going to pay them anyway. It is what it is. But then is there, because I feel like that.
Well, and there seems to be like some future self stuff involved. In the last keynote, they showed the marshmallow experiment, but they didn't talk about the actual effects of the marshmallow experiment, where people who are used to not getting things in the future, they tend to eat the marshmallow right away, because there's no promise of 2 marshmallows in the future.
Right, they've not been given the marshmallow. The promise has been broken. And I feel like that happens a lot with lower income people, with people in poor population. So how do you address like that behavior change, or convincing them like, no, wait to get that thing, when in their experience and in their past experiences, it's been like, I've never been able to get that thing?
Yeah, so this is a very tough question. So, and what basically happens when you are kind of in scarcity mode is that you're more present focused. So scarcity mode, basically, you're depleted and you don't have a lot of resources. And then you, instead of looking in the future, you look at your present self and make decisions for your present self. So there are some interventions that get us out of this mode. We once did an intervention that instead of telling folks that they're hourly workers for when we reported their pay, we worked with a company to do this payable. We framed everyone's income in annual.
Oh, and that made a difference.
So basically, yeah. So and if 60% of our population is hourly, if we can really change the mindset, instead of being like, $35 an hour, you're $70K, or that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I could definitely save.
Oh.
We can think about and this is a lot to do with like how our world is designed. So a lot of it's not on the individual, it's around the companies that kind of shape our environment to help us with that. But we can change our frame for some of this thinking. And in other ways, we should set up our environment to be defaulted so that you don't have to get yourself out of present focus all the time, that you can think about other things, go have fun, and you know that there's a small amount of savings coming out. It's just happening, and you don't have to there's no complexity or worry about this.
Or like all those little apps that are coming out now that do the surreptitious saving.
Like the micro savings apps.
Yeah, and this is great because it basically says why would you do the math yourself? There's no reason.
Yeah.
Just time it with your income. Digit Capital, wonderful apps for this.
Yeah. And then go live your life.
Yeah.
I
And so
love
that
it.
says we could try to get you in future mindset all you want, but you know what? Let's just make it easy.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us, Kristen.
Yeah.
We're so excited for your keynote.
Yeah, really.
And
It's gonna be great.
Yeah, I can't wait.
It's gonna be amazing.
I'm ready. This preview was awesome. I'm excited. All right.
And we're going to go to a song that was Kristen Berman, and we're going to go talk about some common sense to a song called Common Sense by an artist named GLA, a.k.a. Great Lame, out of Cleveland, Ohio. We'll be back in a minute. Bunch of Budget, Bonfire Radio.
Yeah. That's GLA. Hey, so it was written in my mind to be a screw up. I grew up from a city where they knock you for your future. Hard times made me want to speak it on the music. My eyes captured everything from racism to old age. And even grown people still live in the same page. It's all proven, we all who we move with. So I'ma keep the theme motorcycle revolution. Got a certain style that's been made with investment to teach another child at the streets not to mess with. I never knew my black people had a contest to try to make it through your life with no progress. It's all a process, we fall just to uplift. So anybody talking down on me, you can suck this. Big thing in my head called hope, and we can never learn to walk if we hang on rope and stay laying in the chalk like a man on dope. But see, I'm thinking first class elementary, 'cause 28 days ain't where I stop officially. Really, I'm just running through the year like 52 weeks. Known to have a voice, but I let my words speak. Created from the soul, opposite of being weak. Made from the roots like I'm repping tree stumps. So I'm known to make them feel it when I let the words dump. Placed in the war, so I zone in my cipher. I wanna go far, so I trip till my life broke. Yeah. Check. It's coming back how it all makes sense. See, my pockets on limb, but my mind feel rich. And not a lot of dimes really making any sense. And if I'm making any sense, to make it known how I spit. I got 2 hands in control of my own time. But in a minute, I could lose it just from 1-9. Back in the day, I used to play in the gate. But now I'm crushing a box, I call it breaking away. See, I'm packing and breaking as if I'm pumping and faking. I got the homies awaiting up on the 7th summation. Underrated and faded by other people sedated. GLA got archaic and yo, I'm ready to make it. I'm just using my noodle. Working hard on my doodle, just reciting a message to get the people influenced. I'm living in a time where the money on a pedestal, but it's a shame cause it's a fuel to the funerals. And can't nobody understand what it do to you, and life is like a glue, so I just stick to my bigger moves. So pay attention the whole time I've been spitting. I just wanna make you feel it like a sound with a mission. Hold up. Yeah.
And we're back. Bunch of Budget, Bonfire Radio. That was GLA with Common Sense. And we're continuing our AFCPE coverage with our interview with Lillian Singh.
We are here at the AFCPE conference in San Diego, California, learning all about financial capability, financial literacy. The theme this year is Bridging the Gap, and we just watched the Bridging the Racial and Gender Wealth Gap. And we are super excited to have Lillian Singh with us, the director of the Racial Wealth Divide Initiative at Prosperity Now. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Spoiler
for
alert,
me.
we're already big fans, and you should be too.
Aw.
Yeah, exactly. I love it.
Kind.
Oh my gosh, your background is extensive, so we are super excited to have you. What is your background? Give us a breakdown of like what you've done in the past and how you got involved with the Racial Wealth Divide Initiative.
So I always like to start with the origin, my origin story. I'll keep it brief. But basically, the reason why I do this work is because of my personal experience. And so I grew up in South Central LA, to a mother who was a single parent who was in low wage employment my entire childhood. Subsequently had to rely on public services for the majority of my childhood, welfare, food stamps, all of that, right? So growing up, I lived in HUD certified housing. But my mom is ride or die chick. She is one of the strongest women I've ever actually encountered. And one of the things that she did that really demonstrated her strength was she moved me from Mississippi to LA when I was 6. So I was born in Mississippi.
Wow, that's a big move.
It is.
An expensive move.
It is. And, the reason why my mom did that is because at the time, she saw that California could offer my siblings and myself more opportunity and access, even though we got to LA and it was a struggle. But she was right, because when I was in 6th grade, I got into a program called the USC Pre-College Enrichment Academy. And the functionality of the program was to give low-income Black and brown students the same resources and access as upper-income students in other school districts. And so I was in this program, and I was in that program for 6 years, from 6th grade to 12th grade. And
wow, so they took you through middle school and high school.
Yeah,
100%.
middle school and high school. Yeah. And it was college preparatory, and they told us at 6th grade, we were C-level students, that we were all scholars. Right?
That's right.
That we could all achieve, what we are debunking now as the American dream, because we know that education isn't the great equalizer, right, for having a great life. But, that was one of our gateways out of South Central, right, and out and trying to improve the financial capability and sustainability of our own families. So I went through this program, and it was incredible, and I got a lot of resources, and I was able to go to Stanford. And when I got to Stanford, I was grossly underprepared. But one of the things that I learned early on through the fight of my mother is, it's okay to ask for help, to not be ashamed of needing public services and social services. So for me, when I got to Stanford, I took advantage of everything that was on campus, from the writing center to upperclassmen, to mentors and academic advisors, and I graduated with my master's in 4 years.
What?
Yeah.
Whoa.
And
there you go.
From Stanford.
So I share my origin story because, when I talk about the Racial Wealth Divide and I do program work in the community, it's not something theoretical. It's not something that I read about in the book. It's not something that someone told me about. I lived the Racial Wealth Divide. And now, I can proudly say that because of the sacrifices of my mother and my family members, I'm one of the first people in my family to buy a home, right? To be able to actually ascertain, well, I'm in a position now where, my mom is going to retire in 6 years. And I'm just like, Mom, where do you want to go?
Wow.
Right? Like,
that's beautiful.
Because of those sacrifices. And so my work now, I'm working directly with nonprofit leaders of color, in about 12 different cities right now, just trying to strengthen their capacity. And really, I think of myself as a bridge builder. I am really trying to align the different sectors, whether it be the financial industry sector, whether it be the social services sector, whether it be, the political arena, just really trying to build bridges between nonprofits led by people of color, serving people of color in the community, so that they can actually advance their clients' lives. Because my life is a testament of when partnerships done right, success can actually happen. So
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
what I do.
Well, and you're spearheading and we've been doing a podcast series on this, on the high impact nonprofits of color. Why was it important for you to support leaders of color in their nonprofit organizations?
Sure. I think there's two main reasons. When we did the research around disparities between nonprofits led by people of color and those that are majority led, I think what we find are synonymous findings that's happening with Americans with respect to the racial wealth divide. Those organizations are not the lowest capacity, because let me debunk that right now.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they are not low capacity organizations. These are organizations that are poverty stricken. Very few people are willing to invest in them. Very few funders are willing to take risk in their innovations.
They see it as a risk.
Very few. I mean, from my perspective, very few funders are willing to really put themselves on the line and say to ex grantee or nonprofit leader of color that I'm willing to invest in this vision that you have. But we see incubations happening with majority-led organizations all the time.
Yeah.
Like, it's heavily invested in. So it was really important for me to make sure that when we did this work at Prosperity Now, and we'll go into that, but it was important for us to really focus on organizations led by people of color. Two reasons. The majority of our leaders live in the communities in which they serve.
Yes. Yeah. They
Right?
grew up there, a lot of them.
So, they get educations and they go back, right? Because there is a drastic need. Two, the majority of our leaders, they see this nonprofit sector not as like a stepping stone to a better career in the private sector, but really like as an institutional investment in their own livelihoods. Because guess what? Their families are still there.
Yeah.
My family is still in South Central, right?
Yeah.
So I think that for me, it was really important for us to be intentional about focusing on organizations led by people of color. And let me explain that, because we get asked a lot. What does that mean?
Right.
That means that the senior leadership, the executive director, the director, preferably the chief program officer, the COO, they are people of color. So through this project, we are not just investing in the organizations, but we are investing in leaders that will sustain these communities, because they are destined to do so.
Yeah.
And what you talk about is super important, because I know what you mean about the nonprofit, the idea of the nonprofit that are led by people of color and how underfunded they are. And I've seen a number of them put majority people in positions of power because they know that otherwise, even like in a puppet kind of form, because they know that otherwise they're not going to get that funding.
That's right.
And this breaks that down. And this also breaks down the idea. I mean, if you've been listening to our series, wow, the stuff that these guys get accomplished. People always say that nonprofits are money pits and you just throw away to nothing. And these people are changing, like not even just like the cute one kid's life saved story, but entire communities,
like
transforming.
They have the stats.
And it's amazing that these, I'm just thinking about one of them, Jericho Road.
Oh, yeah.
Out of New Orleans, or even Greater Option out of Chicago. These are non-profit housing developers.
Yeah.
Like, they
Huge
are using
projects, real estate
foundation
developers.
dollars to be real estate developers.
Yeah.
Because no one else is willing to invest in their community. Like, what is that?
That's incredible. They're building houses as a nonprofit organization.
And showing that it's possible to do these things.
Right.
Yeah. And that it's a benefit to the community. I feel
That's
that's the biggest part of it. And one thing that you mentioned that I thought was interesting was this idea of like people doing nonprofit as a stepping stone to the careers. And a lot of the folks that we've interviewed have done the opposite. They did the corporate career. They did the corporate work. And they were like, nope, going to the nonprofit, because that's where I know I can be most impactful.
That's right. And let me just be clear. Like, I can make a lot more money in the private sector. I mean, I can go be the diversity vice president
of like PricewaterhouseCoopers or some shit. Yeah.
But seriously, but for me, I'm at a stage of my career now where I'm only doing purpose-driven work. Like, I'm here in San Diego. I'm excited about this conference because, frankly, Rebecca believes in, like, bridging the racial wealth divide, and she sees this community as having a significant footprint in that, and I support her in that. So I'm very thoughtful now about which planes I want to get on, where I want to go, because the movement is too big, and we have too much at risk right now for us to waste time.
Yep.
And I mean, there's an urgency around it. And for me, I see that there needs to be an urgency around what these nonprofits, leaders of color can do and already doing. Just a spotlight shown on them. Like Brenda, North Lawndale Employment Network,
Yes.
social enterprise. She needed an increase for her line of credit, and she couldn't get that increase. I mean, and this is a business model that she's been implementing for over a decade. Like, what is that?
Right.
I mean, we can name it. I won't. I'm on the podcast right now. But I just feel like, I have experiences with other leaders that are majority-led, and they're not expressing the same type of challenges with funders. And there's a trust factor that, I think, I'm hoping, honestly, that, when we release our report at the end of December about our lessons over the last 2 years, that it does really shift the narrative around what funders can do, what other majority-led nonprofits can do, what policy can do to really strengthen the organizations that are frankly just hanging on.
Yeah.
And they're operating in cities that other folks are afraid to operate in.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about the programming have you had to do differently for these leaders of color?
Thank you for that question. I keep getting asked internally, what are you learning? What are you learning?
Yeah.
So I would describe it as we know that there is no silver bullet to address the racial wealth divide. And our leaders in these communities see their clients struggling from every angle. So even, you can take Jericho Row, who is a housing development organization, but because they see challenges around financial literacy for their clients, because they see challenges, frankly, around homelessness for their clients that are trying to get into homes. That's one example, right? Another example before I give what I think, what makes these groups so special. Bonds Accords is another group out of Baltimore. They're a holistic service provider. And basically, they have kids getting gunned down outside their doors.
Wow.
So, if you take one thing, right, from what it takes to work with a nonprofit leader of color is to understand the environments in which they are operating in. They are triaging every day, right? So they are themselves diverting from their intentional mission because they see an urgent need that's now. And because they are seen as trusted entities, they want to support that need. They want to show up for the people in their communities in a way that no one else is actually coming to show up for them. So I would say that it takes an incredible amount of patience, empathy. It takes an incredible amount of just being on the ground. One of our partners in Chicago said it best. If you want to fund these organizations and you drive to their neighborhood, the first step is that you got to get out of the car.
Yes.
Right? So it's one thing to say, yo, I'm ready to fund this movement, right? I want to support this organization. And you get there and you see the chaos. But guess what? They're operating in that chaos day in and day out.
And still providing comprehensive services.
And still providing comprehensive services. So I would say it takes an incredible amount of just understanding the complexity of the challenges that they face. So just because they don't respond to an email in 2 days, understand they may have, frankly, just, dealt with a family who just became homeless.
Yeah.
Or they just dealt with a kid who got shot. Or, frankly, they just dealt with a funder who just defunded them because they weren't compliant with grant, reporting,
right,
et cetera, right? So I think,
or they're doing all of those at once while planning a vigil and a community march for the incidents that are going down.
Come on. So, I think that the lessons are intangible unless you're in it with them. And I'm having a hard time right now trying to summarize, describe, what are you learning that's so brilliant about working with nonprofits of color?
Oh man, I think you did it. I mean, I think the issues that it sounds like nonprofits of color are facing are beyond like, I don't have enough money, I'm not getting enough grants. The reason why they have to be comprehensive is because they are the trusted entity in the neighborhood, and they are the only entity in the neighborhood that people can really trust.
Oftentimes they are.
Yeah, so that's huge.
So they are just multifaceted and just addressing so many different issues all at once.
All right, well, we definitely have to have you back on the show to talk about your findings come the end of the year. This was such a great like little short teaser into that. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for these amazing reports that have added statistics to go along and back up the anecdotal that we've already understood.
The programming, the nonprofits you've introduced us to that we've gotten to feature on the show. Thank you.
And you know what? Thank you all for giving them visibility. I think the hardest part is shining the light on them and their work.
Mm-hmm.
They're all so humble. They really.
I want to be like all of them when I grow up, right?
Right.
And I say this, you know, I get the privilege of being able to work in an incredible office in downtown DC, day in and day out, right? Like I go into my office, I get on a train, I go downtown. But my leaders, like when they leave their homes, oftentimes it's just straight down the street.
Yep.
But then it's not oftentimes like a safe space for them, like even physically for them to be there, but they still choose to go.
Every day.
Yeah. Those are the intangibles that I can't really teach you how to do. You got to get out of the car and go see it yourself.
Ugh, thank you.
Yeah. Time to go to another song. This song is called, excuse me if I pronounce it incorrectly, Chardi Kala. I know there's another syllable in there I probably should have been emphasizing, but it's a Punjabi term, and it means aspiring to maintain a mental state of eternal optimism and joy. I'm probably also mangling that, so if you know that definition a little better, feel free to tell me and I'll correct myself. But that's the name of the song. It's by an artist named Mohan Singh out of Beantown, Boston, Massachusetts, and we'll check you in a minute. Brunch Budget, Bonfire Radio.
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਦੋਸਤੋ, ਇਹ ਗੀਤ ਮੇਰੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਵੀਰਾਂ ਲਈ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਦਿਨ ਤੋਂ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਮੋਢਾ ਜੋੜ ਕੇ ਖੜੇ ਨੇ। ਮੈਨੂੰ ਨਾਂ ਲੈਣ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਨਹੀਂ, ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਹੀ ਆ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੌਣ ਹੋ। ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ, ਤੇ ਇਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜਦੇ ਰਹੋ। ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਤੋਂ ਸੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ, ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ, ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ। ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਤੋਂ ਸੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ, ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ, ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ। ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਤੋਂ ਸੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ, ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ, ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ। ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਤੋਂ ਸੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ, ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ, ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ। ਯਾਰ ਥੋੜੇ ਪਰ ਸਾਰੇ ਦੇ ਸਿਰੇ, ਉਹ ਹਰ ਔਖੇ ਸੌਖੇ ਵੇਲੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਖੜੇ, ਉਹ ਹਰ ਜੰਗ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਦੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਲੜੇ। ਉਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਉਹ ਭੁੱਲਣੀਆਂ ਰਾਤਾਂ ਡੂੰਘੀਆਂ ਸੀ, ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਾਤਾਂ ਲੱਗਣ ਪੈਗ ਉੱਤੇ ਪੈਗ, ਨਾ ਕੋਈ ਫਿਕਰ ਨਾ ਕੋਈ ਫਾਕਾ, ਰਲ ਮਿਲ ਕੇ ਤੋੜ ਲਈਆਂ ਬੁਰਕੀਆਂ। ਉਹ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗ ਗਿਆ ਯਾਰੀ ਦਾ ਮੁੱਲ ਕੀ ਆ, ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਸੁੱਖਾਂ 'ਚ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਵਾ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਯਾਰੋ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਦੁੱਖਾਂ 'ਚ ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਆ ਦੁਖੀ ਵੀਰੋ। ਸਾਡੇ ਚੋਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੀ ਹੋ ਜੇ ਤਰੱਕੀ, ਤੇ ਬਾਕੀਆਂ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਨਾਲ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ ਪੱਕੀ। ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਜੱਗਾ ਨਾ ਜੈਲਸੀ ਲਈ ਕੋਈ ਆ ਰੱਖੀ, ਨਾਲੇ ਬਹਿਣ ਨਾ ਦਈਏ ਜੀ ਨੱਕ ਉੱਤੇ ਮੱਖੀ। ਕੱਲੇ ਨੂੰ ਲੈਂਦਾ ਹਰ ਕੋਈ ਢਾ, ਪਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਉਹ ਕੱਲੇ ਨਾ ਜੀ ਨਾ। ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਤੋਂ ਸੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ, ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ, ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ। ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਤੋਂ ਸੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ, ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ, ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ। ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਤੋਂ ਸੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ, ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ, ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ। ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਤੋਂ ਸੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ, ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ, ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ। ਉਹ ਮੇਰੇ ਯਾਰ ਬੇਲੀ ਨੇ ਅੱਤ ਇਹ ਬੁਲਾਇਆ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਝੱਟ ਕਿਤੇ ਅੜ ਜਾਵੇ ਗਰਾਰੀ ਇਹ ਗਰਾਰੀ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਚੱਕ ਇੱਥੇ ਰੱਖ ਉਹ ਮੇਰੇ ਯਾਰ ਬੇਲੀ ਨੇ ਅੱਤ ਇਹ ਬੁਲਾਇਆ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਝੱਟ ਕਿਤੇ ਅੜ ਜਾਵੇ ਗਰਾਰੀ ਇਹ ਗਰਾਰੀ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਚੱਕ ਰੱਬ ਰਾਖਾ ਵੇ ਸੁਣ ਲਵੇ ਸਾਡੀਆਂ ਅਰਦਾਸਾਂ ਯਾਰਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਕਾਮਯਾਬੀਆਂ 'ਚ ਸਾਡੀ ਆ ਸਫਲਤਾ ਉਹ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਚੁੱਕ ਭੁੱਲ ਜਾਣਾ ਕੰਮ ਗਲਤ ਆ ਉਹ ਤਾਈਓ ਰੱਖਾਂ ਯਾਦ ਮੈਂ ਯਾਰਾਂ ਦਾ ਰਵੇ ਸਾਥ ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਰਹੇ ਗੁੱਡੀ ਚੜੀ ਰਹੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਇਹ ਗੀਤ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਲਈ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਤੋਂ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਤੋਂ ਸੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਤੋਂ ਸੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਤੋਂ ਸੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ 'ਚ ਰਹਿਣ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ
We're back. Brunch and Budget, Bonfire Radio. That was Mohan Singh out of Boston with Chardhi Kala, produced by Nagra. We had our interview with Lillian Singh, and now we're about to get into our conversation with Sandra Davis to see if we can get Sage.
We are at the AFCPE conference, the Association for Financial Counseling and Planning Education in San Diego, California. And we are interviewing all of the keynotes. And we were lucky enough to catch Sandra Davis, a financial coach, educator, consultant, and motivational speaker, and executive director of Sage Financial Solutions.
So in other words, not that Sandra D, it's a different one.
That's right. But here's the thing. That's who I was named after. Is that a blast, right?
Yes.
So my mother,
that's really cool.
I was born in 1960. My mother's favorite actress at that time was Sandra Dee. Now here's the thing.
Mama got
I
taste.
added the U to my name so that people don't call me Sandy. Because if they call me Sandy, then I have to kill them.
I'm with that. I'm with
Noted.
No, okay.
And she can. Just, when you see her picture, you'll know.
You know.
that. With a look.
So, Sandra, financial coaching. I am curious because, I'm a financial planner. I'm a CFP. I just got my AFC. Woo! Accredited financial counselor. Thank you. But I feel like that we've seen a lot of people who call themselves financial coaches. So if someone's looking for a financial coach, how can you what kinds of questions should you ask when you're looking for a financial coach?
How do they
you
separate?
suss out
Yeah.
who's good, who's fake, who's real?
Right. So my perspective is that we have a financial intervention continuum, right? And that begins with financial education all the way through to financial therapy. And counseling and coaching and planning are all part of that continuum. So it's not so much that it's an either or. I work with a lot of financial planners who use coaching skills and like to use the term financial coaching because it seems to be more appealing to clients. And so I don't begrudge people making that choice. The challenge is it tends to water down what coaching really is.
Yes.
Okay.
And so that's when I get a little bit concerned. It's kind of the difference between, when someone calls someone a financial planner and basically what they are as an investment advisor or an insurance salesman, which, I don't begrudge people doing what they do. Let's just call it what it is so that people don't get confused. And so when we think about financial coaching, what distinguishes coaching from any other intervention is that a coach is more focused on a client's underlying value that's connected to what their goal is. So if you were to say to me, you wanted to buy your first home, a counselor might say, okay, so let's look at your credit score and let's start working on your budget, or, and a planner might say, okay, how does that fit in with the rest of your goals? How does that look about your retirement? Do you have any kids to prepare for college for? An educator might say, so these are the steps that it takes. This is what you need to know about what home ownership is. And so they'll make sure that you know everything. A coach is going to say, so talk to me about what's important about that. Right? And so we're going to stay there until you're really clear and you're having your moment of self-awareness before we begin to talk about an action plan. So coaching, you spend a lot of time in discovery, which is a common term in the financial planning world as well. I have a master's in financial planning. I teach in CFP programs, so I get that. It's just that discovery in the financial planning world is often about the planner understanding the client. As a coach, my job is for the client to understand and have their own aha moment and their own self-awareness and play a very powerful role in creating their own journey forward. So they might need my expertise, right? I have information, but they know themselves best. And so everything that I do is in service of them excavating what matters most to them. What are the opportunities and the obstacles, and what are they willing to do about it? Because, see, I don't do the work. They do the work. So a lot of those aha moments happen when we're apart. And so as a coach, I'm not there to be their hero. So I have to rein in my hero. I have to rein in that know-it-all part of me.
Financial planners are very much like, I'm the authority. I'm going to tell you what to do, and you're just going to do it.
Yes, and there's value to that.
Yeah.
Right? There's value to that unless it doesn't work. And so what I say to people, to recognize, so financial planners are notorious for saying things like, a non-compliant client. Right? And the fact is,
yes, they are. I've heard that.
Yes, and if you have,
I've never said that about my clients, for the record.
I appreciate that. and here's the thing: it's not a bad thing. They want what's best for folks. So even when I say these things, it's not to blast other interventions. I'm not of the mind that it's versus this or that.
Yeah,
I'm of the perspective that everything matters. And so if I'm working with a client that just needs me to tell them what to do, guess what? That's what we're going to do. Now, if they don't do it, I'm checking my technique, right? So it's not about what they did or did not do, because if I haven't taken the time to understand what makes them tick, if I haven't taken the time to understand what's going to make them implement the plan, I have not served them well. And so that's my role as a coach. So when I'm teaching people to become coaches, we're throttling back the expert and really allowing room for that client to figure out, how do they step into their own power around their own dollars? So even when circumstances are dire, we want that client to feel powerful, that they have choice, irrespective of the situation that they're in or the circumstances that they might be facing. So that's really the main difference. So to your question, how do you choose? You ask. Clients must use their power and understand that they truly are the experts in their own life.
So I feel like that I encounter a lot of clients and a lot of folks in general who don't feel that and who don't feel empowered. And so what kinds of questions can you have them start with when they're looking for someone like a financial coach?
So I would say start with, tell me how you would work with me.
That's great. Yeah.
And then tell me how you're compensated.
Yes.
And then who makes the final decisions? Because the thing is, the clients don't always know that just because they get advice doesn't mean that it's the best advice. That's why you have people who don't honor the safe withdrawal rates or don't do the things that planners or counselors or educators would say do, because it's possible to know better and not do better.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And so the fact is, they can't do better if they don't know better. But knowing better does not mean doing better.
Right.
Most definitely.
Right?
Most definitely.
Right? So how do we figure that out? So I would say if you're courting, right? If you're courting coaches and thinking about who do you want to date and get serious with.
Yep. Because
Right?
that's what it feels
That's
like.
what it
It's such a
is.
relationship.
That's exactly what it is.
And if it's not a relationship, trust yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Clients have to trust themselves. And if they are feeling shame, blame, I train people to say, look, when you're with me, this is a no shame zone, right? All the shoulda, woulda, couldas, the things you wish you had done that you didn't do. If you're talking to somebody that does not have that approach with you, you have to consider if that person is going to be with you as you do the dance towards financial security, because it is a dance. I tell people all the time, this is not linear. You might have a client that's ready in one stage of their lives and not in another. This is a cha-cha. Sometimes with a little spin in the middle. Right?
Exactly. Well, I mean, it's like in general, I think a lot of teaching artists understand this, because, you go into situations where there are systems and your role is not to be an instructor who knows everything. I've often felt that, as an educator who comes into a system that is not one that you created, you have to listen way more than you speak and understand that they are the experts in their life, just as you're saying, and help them remember that.
Yeah. I don't need to be anyone else's hero. You know, I
Yes.
want them to own their own power. So that's why I literally, if I had hair on the back of my neck, it would stand up when people say I empower people. That makes me crazy, because if
Right.
I say to you, I empower you, what am I saying about where your power is from the get-go?
Right.
Right? If I empower you, I own your power, and that's just not real. It's not real. You may not see your power. You might not claim it. You might not stand in it. But I'm certainly not giving it to you.
Well, that's those when you go to those seminars where they're like, we do this and we do this, and they rile you up and they give you the kind of energy that a hype person gives you when you go to a concert.
Yes,
but it's
yes.
not yours.
It's
That's
not-
that's
that's
right.
right.
Yeah.
See, and that's the point. So for me, when I'm talking with someone, I want to know, what is their intrinsic motivation, right? Because I don't believe we can motivate other people. Motivation, in my perspective, comes from within. And Ted Klontz, one of my absolute favorite people in the whole world, I took a class with him, and he said, with intrinsic motivation, nothing will stop you. With extrinsic motivation, anything will stop you. And so that's just really how I view coaches. And so, you know, when people are talking and you see money coach this, financial coach that, you know, ask good questions. But before you even talk to anybody, decide what works best for you. And sometimes people don't know. I mean, you know, there's oftentimes people just don't know what they don't know. But trust your spidey sense. You know, if you're
Right.
talking to somebody and the vibe just feels like, you know, maybe they're too paternalistic, or maybe, you know, they're too attached to their perception of your situation. Notice those things. Trust yourself. You know when someone is shaming you.
Yeah. That's
Whether
the
it's the
big
tone,
thing.
whether it's a facial expression, you know when it doesn't feel good to you.
If they don't give you the thing you need on the first date, they're not going to give it to you on the 5-year anniversary.
There you go.
That's right.
I'm with you on
Yeah,
that.
no,
That's
I
true.
feel that.
That's true. And so, and the thing is that you are always in control. And here's the hard part. Because when people are in financial distress, it doesn't feel like that.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And sometimes they're reaching out to this expert because it feels like they can fix it. First of all, they didn't break it.
Right.
They can't fix it. That doesn't mean they can't provide you with the information and the resources that you need to fix it. But the bottom line, I don't know about you, but unless you're writing checks, you can't fix anybody else's situation.
Yep.
And if you're writing checks, I want to be in that line. Let me know.
Yeah.
Let me know
Whole
in that
different
line.
kind of financial spectrum, right?
Right. So, you know, that's kind of the thing, is that people really do have to own. And I hear a lot of people say things about, oh, the personal responsibility. You know what? We all have something that we know our lives would be better if we did that thing. Right? We all know that. Some people it's money. Some people it's chocolate. Welcome to my world. So, you know, you just have to kind of decide, how do you need that person to be with you, and make sure that you're not afraid to stay in control. Because the bottom line is, just like any other professional, a financial coach is there for your highest and best. And if you don't get that vibe from them, then you either need to run or tell them what you need. Some of them, you know, they might just be learning. This might be a new thing. I mean, I train a lot of new coaches, and sometimes it's bumpy, but their intentions are good. But it's important for people to understand, intentions not the same as impact. So if someone is impacting you in a way that does not feel right, you owe it to yourself. You owe it to yourself to find someone who can.
Wow. Wow. Whew. Oh, dropping all the knowledge, Sandra D.
Sandra.
At least she didn't call
Sandra
me
D.
Sandy. She didn't call me Sandra.
Sandra. Oh, no. I learned that lesson at the top of the show.
There's no sandiness.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a joy. I've been following you all for a long time, so I love it. And I'm so happy for you about that AFC. Go ahead with your bad self.
Financial coaching next.
That's, please, anytime.
Well,
anytime.
and what you've been doing that too. So
yeah.
you know, it's rounding out the coaching the coach.
Yes.
Coaching the
There we
coach.
go.
I love it. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Thank you
Thank you.
both.
All right. Want to thank everybody that we interviewed today. That was fantastic stuff. And we're finishing off with an artist named Sage, coming out of, where are they from? Out of Birmingham, Alabama, with Blazing Razors. And we'll check y'all next week. That's your budget. Bonfire Radio. Peace.
Yeah. ASF. nigga. My pockets filled with blazing razors. Taking order to my ink associates with paper. And not another rapper my age you could say that's greater. But I'ma make it later, time to get it in. I'm taking water and creative vapor. A second on the track and everybody saying save it. I don't let it get to my head, ain't getting lost. The laws, you might just say they labor. Because I work so hard, blind fury like it bought a pair of frames from Schaefer. I'm from Press City, cornbread and green slices tapers. But back in April, tornadoes came through and ate the tables. Chairs, couches, sofas, all the chips, all the soda, floorboards, TVs, CDs, DVDs. All my family survived, I know my Lord and Savior made it sable. I've been on a sort of hiatus lately, and I tried skating, during which I broke my ankle, so walk with me. I love it cause I really ain't been able lately. I'm trying to do shows, expand my fan base. My birthday's coming in June, and I ain't gonna have no damn cake. I gotta eat and I upgraded to a man plate. I'm trying to get the caviar, I ain't looking at Kent State. Now I could contemplate and blame people mandate about how I'm the greatest rapper, nobody knows I'm damn great. Trying to have labels trying to sign me right behind me just so I can turn them down. I don't give a fuck what the man say. I'm gonna make it my way, that way or the highway. Sorry for the corny rhyme, but this is really on my mind. A nickel past a dime, soon to add a penny. Rhyming like I'm in my 20s, I'm so ahead of my time. Mouth moving so fast, so ahead of my mind. This is rap race, my nigga, I'm so ahead of the line. I'm so ahead of the vine, but knowing that it's a crime, my niggas looking at me like go ahead and just sign. Like I get phone calls from big wigs, hey dig this, a twit pic of me and Kanye getting her dick slit. No homo to the maximum, but that nigga's my idol. When he get hoes, so I'm bagging him. Right now I might be hot, but I'm just on my couch snacking. I'm not famous till I get a fucking chance for this to happen. So me and Kanye are like at this nice ass restaurant, you know what I'm saying? And like they have fish sticks. So like I ordered the fish sticks. I'm like at the waitress, I'm like, let me have the fish sticks. And then Kanye turns around and he looks at me like dash _ dash. And I'm like, okay, now I'm famous. ASF, bitch.